One of our subscribers shared this story with me, and when she said the words her father used to throw her out, I felt the cold through the screen. "You are a liability to this family name, and you are out of the will," my father said, pointing a trembling finger toward the door. He didn't ask who the father of my child was. He didn't ask if I was safe. He didn't even ask if I needed help. He simply seized my pregnancy as the perfect excuse to discard me before I could expose what he had done. I didn't cry. Instead, I reached beneath my chair and pulled out a small gift box. Inside it were 3 years' worth of unpaid loan notices, debts he had forged in my name. I placed the box carefully on his placemat. Then I turned, stepped out into the falling snow, and left without saying a word. Before I tell you what was inside that box and how it unraveled his entire life 7 years later, drop a comment. Where are you watching from right now? I want to see how far this story travels. 7 years is a long time to carry anger, but it is precisely enough time to construct a portfolio strong enough to consume a man whole. I stood in my office, staring out over the skyline of the financial district. The window was cold against my forehead. I was no longer the shaking pregnant girl in a thrift store coat. I was 29, founder of VM Holdings, and my specialty was distressed debt. I bought bad loans from banks tired of chasing ghosts, and I turned those ghosts into profit. I walked back to my desk and tapped the spacebar. The monitor flickered awake, revealing a spreadsheet I had been refining for 6 months. It wasn't revenge, it was math. At the top of the sheet, GBU, my father's construction company. The numbers were bleeding red. Gavin had always excelled at handshakes and charm. Cash flow, not so much. He had overextended himself on 3 commercial developments that never materialized. Now the interest was devouring him. He thought he was battling a weak economy. He blamed bad luck. He cursed the regional banks. He had no idea the invisible hand tightening around his throat belonged to me. I didn't hack servers. I didn't break laws. I simply acted like any aggressive creditor. I called the vice presidents at the 3 community banks holding his overdue notes. They were exhausted from chasing him, frustrated by his excuses, nervous about the default contaminating their quarterly reports. I offered to purchase the debt at 60 cents on the dollar. They thanked me. They signed. Just like that, I became the primary holder of Gavin's obligations. Total exposure, $450,000. To a Wall Street hedge fund, that's pocket change. To a man who leveraged his reputation just to lease his Mercedes, it was a grave. He was drowning, and I was the only one holding the life preserver. My intercom buzzed. My lawyer, the man I paid well to stand between my face and my father's, told me Gavin had responded to the pressure. He wanted a meeting. He wanted to know if VM Holdings would entertain restructuring. I smiled, not a joyful smile, the smile of a hunter hearing the trap snap shut. Gavin was predictable. He would assume VM Holdings was just another faceless firm he could charm or manipulate, the way he had manipulated everyone his entire life. He would believe he could flash his teeth, sign something vague, and push the consequences down the road. I instructed my lawyer to schedule the meeting, offer hope, but make it clear the window closed in 48 hours. I needed him afraid. I grabbed my coat. The acquisition phase had ended. Liquidation was next. The drive to the meeting was silent. No radio, no distractions. For 7 years, his voice had drowned out my own thoughts. People ask why I didn't fight back sooner. They assume I ran because I was frightened, pregnant, and overwhelmed by single motherhood. That's the story Gavin tells at his country club. The tragic father abandoned by his reckless daughter. But I didn't leave because of the baby. I left because of a signature. At 18, he made me corporate secretary of GBU. He framed it as resume building, a formality. I trusted him. He stacked papers in front of me and told me to sign. So I signed. What I didn't know was that I was signing personal guarantees on high-risk commercial loans he had already mentally defaulted on. He used my clean credit as fresh collateral when his own reputation was exhausted. When the notices started arriving, I confronted him. He laughed, called me dramatic, told me to focus on my little life and let men handle business. 3 months after I left, I tried renting an apartment. 6 months pregnant, coat that wouldn't close, leasing office smelling of stale coffee and floor wax. I had deposit money, I had employment verification. The agent looked at her screen, then at me with pity edged in disgust. She said my credit report was catastrophic. I slept in my car for 2 weeks. Eventually, I found a landlord willing to take cash quietly. Every night, shivering in that car, I whispered promises to my unborn daughter. Your mother is not a failure. She is not irresponsible. She is the victim of identity theft, and the thief was the man meant to protect her. That is why bankruptcy wasn't enough. There's a concept I think about often: the theft of dignity. Money can be earned again. Property can be replaced. But when someone steals your name, uses your identity to mask their incompetence, they mark you. They force you to walk through life branded untrustworthy, while they remain spotless. For 7 years, Gavin let the family believe I was reckless with money. He let me carry the shame of his greed. If I simply dismantled his company, he would spin it. He'd call it a hostile takeover, blame the market, play martyr, and keep his dignity. That could not happen. I needed his signature again, but this time not on a guarantee, on a confession, a document admitting, legally and irrevocably, that he committed fraud. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat, an email from his lawyer. Gavin wanted a clause protecting his personal vehicle from any liquidity event. I laughed, a cold, sharp sound in the quiet car. He was worried about his Mercedes while he was about to lose his soul. I parked in the garage beneath the law firm and checked my reflection in the mirror. I didn't look like the girl who once slept in her car. I looked like the woman who owned the building. The conference room next to mine was soundproofed, but the high-definition video feed captured every rustle and whisper. I sat in the dim light, watching. I wasn't hacking. I owned the shell company leasing the suite. In the main boardroom, a sleek laptop sat open on the long mahogany table, webcam active, a small green light glowing steadily. I had told his attorney it was for silent partners overseas to observe. Gavin entered first. 7 years had deepened the lines around his eyes. His suit hung looser, as though he were shrinking inside it. But the swagger remained. He tossed his coat over a chair like a man convinced he would escape again. Then Justin walked in. Seeing him on that screen sent ice through my veins. My ex-boyfriend, the father of my child, the man Gavin had pressured into silence. Justin looked different too, softened, bloated by expense account indulgence and comfortable lies. And for the first time in 7 years, the past and the future were about to collide in the same room. He was carrying Gavin's briefcase, playing the loyal lieutenant. It was pathetic. He had traded his own child for a mid-level management position in a failing company. Gavin mocked the office space, calling it a waste of money designed to make venture capitalists feel important. He sat down at the head of the table. Ignoring the open laptop, he did not even look at the green light. To him, technology was just a tool for people beneath him. Justin asked if they were sure VM Holdings was legitimate, noting that we had moved fast with no due diligence. Gavin snapped back, telling him to stop sweating. He claimed we were not looking at the books, but at the brand. He believed the G-Build name still meant something. He explained his plan. Take the liquidity injection, pay off the immediate fires, and in 6 months refinance again. I leaned closer to my screen. There it was, the confession. He was not planning to fix the business, he was planning to cycle the debt. He was a junkie looking for his next fix. Gavin turned to his lawyer and demanded that $50,000 be moved to a Cayman account once the wire hit. He refused to lose the deposit on his lake house just because suppliers were whining about invoices. When his lawyer warned him to wait for the counterparty, Gavin scoffed. He laughed, a dry, hacking sound, and said this reminded him of his daughter. He mocked how I used to worry about permits and budgets. When Justin said my name, Gavin's voice dropped an octave. He told him not to say my name. He called me weak. He said I could not handle the pressure of the life he built. He speculated that I was probably waiting tables in some dive bar in Ohio, blaming him for my failures. He called me a bad asset. I stared at his pixelated face. A bad asset? A write-off? He did not see a daughter. He saw a line item that did not return a profit. My hand hovered over the microphone button. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that the waitress he was mocking currently owned the building he was sitting in, but I stopped myself. Screaming is for victims. Executioners stay quiet until the blade drops. I checked the time. My lawyer was standing in the hallway waiting for my signal. Gavin was comfortable now. He felt safe. He felt superior. He was exactly where I needed him to be. I texted my lawyer to send him in. My lawyer, Marcus, entered the room with the silence of a man who knows exactly how the game ends. He did not apologize for the wait. He did not offer a handshake. He simply placed a heavy leather binder in the center of the mahogany table. Gavin did not even look at him. He pulled the binder closer, flipping past the first 20 pages of legal definitions with the impatience of an addict reaching for a needle. He was looking for one thing, the disbursement schedule. He wanted to see the number. He found the figure on page 4, $450,000. He smiled, noting that it cleaned the slate with the regional banks. Marcus remained standing and told him the line of credit was contingent on the signature. Gavin pulled a gold fountain pen from his jacket pocket. It was a Mont Blanc, probably bought on credit 3 years ago. He unscrewed the cap and hovered over the signature line. Then, for a split second, the instincts of a lifelong con artist kicked in. He hesitated. He flipped back a page, his eyes scanning the dense paragraphs of Clause 14. My heart hammered against my ribs. Clause 14 was the kill switch. Gavin asked about the clause regarding default triggering immediate acceleration. He was reading. He was not supposed to read. Marcus checked his watch. He did not look nervous. He looked bored. He told Mr. Hall that the wire transfer window for the liquidity injection closed at 4 in the afternoon sharp. That was 4 minutes from now. He tapped the face of his watch and explained that if they missed the window, the funds would sit in escrow over the weekend, and they would have to re-underwrite the terms on Monday. Interest rates went up that morning. The deal might change. It was a beautiful lie. There was no wire window. I controlled the money. I could send it at midnight if I wanted to. But Gavin did not know that. Gavin knew he had payroll checks bouncing tomorrow. He knew his Mercedes was scheduled for repossession on Monday morning. The greed fought the caution in his eyes. I watched it happen in high definition. The fear of waiting 3 days, of facing a weekend without cash, overpowered his survival instinct. He snapped that Monday was too late and agreed to sign immediately. He turned the page back. He pressed the nib of the pen to the paper. The ink flowed. He signed his name with a flourish, large and looping, the signature of a man who thought he was important. He commanded Justin to witness. Justin signed below him, eager to please, eager to get his cut. They had no idea what they had just done. In commercial law, the nuclear option is a confession of judgment, banned in many states for consumer loans because it's brutally predatory. But in New York commercial lending, it's fair game. By signing it, Gavin didn't just take a loan. He waived trial, counsel, notice, everything. He basically handed me a trigger and pre-authorized me to pull it. Gavin smugly closed the binder, told Marcus to praise the smart choice, and demanded wire confirmation. He thought he'd bought 6 more months to bleed the company, but the ink was dry, the trap was shut, and I stopped hiding. I walked in wearing a tailored charcoal suit, not the thrift store coat I disappeared in 7 years ago. The room went dead. Gavin looked up, irritated, then recognized me. The color drained from his face. I told him to sit. Justin protested it was a private meeting, and I calmly told them they were meeting VM Holdings, Valerie Marie. I asked if they seriously hadn't checked the LLC filing, so desperate for cash they never looked at who was signing the check. Gavin tried to recover. Buying his debt made him his partner. He claimed the contract gave him 6 months before payment. He tapped the binder like a trophy. I told him the ink was dry on a fraudulent document. I slid a manila envelope to him. Inside were dated, high-resolution photos from a Newark repossession yard taken yesterday showing the Caterpillar excavators and cranes he'd listed as collateral were already repossessed. I quoted the clause, "The borrower warrants the collateral is in their possession and lien-free." He'd pledged assets he didn't own. Default wasn't in 6 months. It was immediate, seconds after signing. I turned to Marcus. Execute. He explained that the confession of judgment allowed instant judgment on default, and he'd already e-filed the affidavit with the county clerk. I looked Gavin in the eye. I didn't sue him. He waived that right. The judgment was entered. VM Holdings now had liens on his bank accounts, investments, and house. Justin yelled it was illegal. I said it was commercial law, and it was done. Garnishments were already being served, accounts frozen, cards dead, and the repo truck was headed for the Mercedes. Gavin collapsed, suddenly small, and tried to play the father card. I told him he was my father when he forged my signature, ruined my credit, and left me sleeping in a car. He wasn't a father. He was a bad investment, and I just liquidated him. Then Justin stood, smiling. He revealed the backup plan. A process server handed me an ex parte custody order, effective immediately, granting Justin temporary sole custody of our daughter, Lily. The order relied on an affidavit Gavin signed that morning, calling me mentally unstable and dangerous enough for the judge to act without a hearing. Gavin watched me with pure malice. If he couldn't get my money, he'd destroy my life. Justin offered a deal. Unfreeze Gavin's accounts, hand back the company, and maybe he'd drop custody. Otherwise, Lily was leaving that day. They thought they'd checkmated me. They hadn't. I asked Marcus about the retainer. Justin confirmed he'd paid his custody lawyer $15,000 and held up the check. I read the routing number and told him it was drawn on Gavin's personal account at First City Bank, an account I'd frozen 4 minutes ago. That check would bounce. His lawyer wouldn't file a single motion. He'd drop Justin before sunset. Justin's smile died. I told Gavin he just admitted to perjury in front of 3 witnesses. Marcus, an officer of the court, was obligated to report it. The arrogance vanished. All that was left was fear. No money, no leverage, no lawyer, and a perjury investigation incoming. I told them to leave before security threw them out. Justin crumpled the custody papers, muttered he was done, and walked out. Gavin stayed a moment, waiting for mercy. I gave none. I told him to go, so he shuffled out quietly. A man who'd sold his soul and got nothing.